Coming up on this Tuesday edition of Daybreak, the country's rail union ends its 22-day strike after Parliament agrees to form a subcommittee to guarantee the state-run rail operator is not privatized in the future. While the issue of reforming the spy agency continues to niggle both sides, ruling and opposition party lawmakers have one last chance on this Tuesday to get a number of key bills, including next year's budget, passed before the year ends. Plus, a second deadly suicide bomb attack in 24 hours in the southern Russian city of Volgograd kills 14 people, raising security concerns ahead of the Sochi Winter Olympics in February. Daybreak begins now.
You're watching Daybreak on Tuesday, December 31st. I'm Choi Yusan in Seoul. We begin with the nation's longest ever rail strike, which has come to an end after lawmakers promised moves to prevent the privatization of rail services. More than 8,000 workers who took part in the 22-day strike will return to work later on this Tuesday. Our Kim Hyun-bin has the details.
After 22 days, striking Korail union workers have agreed to cross back across the picket lines and start back at work 11 a.m. Tuesday. Union leaders promised to call off the strike Monday after the country's two main political parties agreed to form a parliamentary subcommittee under the Transport Ministry.
We will be actively involved in the new subcommittee to guide it in the right direction, and we will share the process with the public to enhance our public railway system.
However, while the union leader urged union members to return to work, he also called on them to continue with the fight for where they work. The formation of the committee was one of the 5 changes the union asked for during talks with Korail last Thursday. Once formed, the committee will deal with issues related to improving the management of the nation's railways without privatizing railway services. Korail is currently in debt to the tune of $16 billion, with poor management blamed as a primary reason. The privatization issue has been the main point of contention for the union and precipitated the strike. They have maintained the government's plan to run a subsidiary to run a new bullet train line is actually the first step toward privatizing rail services in the future, something the government denies. The parliamentary committee will have an equal number of members from each of the two main rival parties, but will be headed by someone from the ruling Saenuri party. Meanwhile, despite the strike's end, police say they will continue to press charges against Korail union leaders. The police issued 6 more arrest warrants on Monday, bringing the total to 31. 2 union members are currently in police custody, while another is being questioned by the police. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
On this final day of the year 2013, the Parliament is set to convene a plenary session to pass a number of key bills, including next year's budget bill, saving itself from having to draw up an unprecedented provisional budget. Our Kim Hyun-ji reports.
The Parliament had hoped to pass next year's budget bill and a bill on reforming the scandal-ridden National Intelligence Service in a full member session Monday, but failed. However, hours of marathon talks between the floor leaders of the rival parties throughout all of Monday have made significant progress toward the final passage of the 2 bills. On Monday, they came to an agreement on next year's budget bill and a plan to revise the tax code, which involves lowering the bar for those who will be subject to the highest income tax rate of 38%. Currently, those who make more than 300 million won or $284,000 a year are required to pay the highest rate. However, the agreement lowers the bar substantially to those making at least 150 million won or $142,000 a year. This marks the first tax increase on the rich under the Park Geun-hye administration. Monday was the day that the leaders of the rival parties had agreed to pass the 2014 budget bill and a bill on reforming the scandal-ridden National Intelligence Service. However, they spent much of the day fighting over what the scope of the NIS reform should be, stalling the processing of next year's budget. The biggest sticking point had to do with the addition of a clause in the bill on reforming the National Intelligence Service, which bans NIS agents from having full access to government offices. However, the two sides reached a tentative compromise late Monday, in which NIS agents will be banned from having full access to government offices. Sources also say that the tentative agreement stipulates penalties for any illegal activities performed by agents who are part of the psychological warfare unit. The $340 billion budget plan for 2014, drawn up by the government in September, has been stuck in the legislature for months, as the rival parties have been at odds over allegations that the NIS tried to sway public opinion in favor of now President Park Geun-hye ahead of last year's presidential election. Kim Hyun-ji, Arirang News.
Here's Korea's follow-up reaction to Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit last week to the Yasukuni War Shrine. President Park Geun-hye expressed hope that there wouldn't be any more incidents in the new year that damage trust between the two sides and dig up wounds of the past. The remark was apparently directed at Japan, though she didn't mention the country by name. Echoing her concerns, the National Assembly's Foreign Affairs Committee unanimously adopted a resolution on Monday that called on Tokyo to immediately stop actions that aim to revive Japan's militarism. Abe visited the shrine, which honors convicted war criminals along with the country's war dead last week, drawing immediate criticism from Japan's regional neighbors. The Chinese government says its leaders will not meet with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe following his visit to the controversial Yasukuni Shrine. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Qin Gang said Monday that Abe had miscalculated China-Japan relations since taking office and had made mistake after mistake. Qin also said Abe's visit to the shrine, which honors Class A war criminals, was the same as honoring fascists and the Nazis of Asia. The spokesperson said the Chinese people do not welcome such a Japanese leader, adding that Abe needs to admit his mistakes to the Chinese government and people. North Korea's purge of aides close to the uncle of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, who was executed earlier this month, isn't over yet. South Korea's unification minister Ryu Gil-jae told lawmakers Monday that the ministry has detected signs that personnel related to Chang Song-taek are still being removed from their posts. Meanwhile, diplomatic sources say North Korea's deputy ambassador to UNESCO, Hong Young, was called back to Pyongyang on Monday following the summoning of other diplomats, including the North's ambassador to Sweden and Malaysia earlier this month. North Korea has asked South Korean companies at the Inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex to pay taxes when it promised to exempt them from when resuming operations at the joint business park this September. According to the Seoul's Unification Ministry on Monday, North Korea notified the businesses last week to pay taxes imposed from January to April 8th. Pyongyang added that it would add extra charges if the companies fail to pay the taxes by next Friday. The South Korean government has refused to accept the demand, saying it goes against their earlier agreement.
If you want the latest news from Korea and around the world.
Return to the negotiations.
President Park Geun-hye planned, given the current circumstances.
On your way to work or at home.
Defense Ministry. The legislature will convene a...
Tune into Daybreak on Arirang TV.
Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said Tuesday. The financial ministers of Korea and China have agreed to boost cooperation in dealing with global uncertainties stemming from the economic downturn in emerging countries and tapering of quantitative easing by the United States. Our Kim Hyun-gil has more.
Korean Finance Minister Han Ho-seok and his Chinese counterpart Shi Xiaoshi came away from Monday's meeting with an agreement to form a unified front against economic uncertainties in emerging markets and work together in addressing Washington's move to taper its quantitative easing. Korea's finance ministry said the two sides proposed boosting bilateral exchanges to develop the service sector, which is a key to boosting domestic demand and achieving sustainable growth. Setting up joint venture businesses between both countries was also discussed. Climate change was also on the table, with Seoul and Beijing agreeing to increase cooperation on green technology and industry, energy conservation and environmental protection. Korea and China have held regular economic meetings since 1999 as part of efforts to increase cooperation. Monday's meeting was the 12th of its kind and the first since the two nations' respective governments took power this year. Both sides agreed to meet again in China in 2014. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
As we wrap up the year 2013, our Yurian gives us details of how Korea's main bourse Kospi performed this year.
The Korea Composite Stock Price Index ended at 2011.34 on the last trading day of this year, rising only 0.7% from last year. The lackluster performance is in stark contrast to a 56% jump of Japanese shares and a 26% Wall Street gain.
High production costs, the lack of an expansionary monetary policy, and delayed corporate restructuring all led to poor corporate results in Korea, which weighed heavily on the stock market.
The worst performers were shipping and construction companies. But it was none other than Samsung Electronics that really pushed down the Kospi, with its stock price falling by as much as 7.5% this year.
Samsung Electronics have been hitting record high operating profits, but with smartphones no longer seen as a commonplace products, investors have become wary about Samsung's future.
This year's star players was Naver, Korea's biggest portal with the most popular search engine. Buoyed by the success of its mobile messenger service called Line, the company saw its share value rise by over 100% this year. That pushed up Naver to the 6th most valuable company listed on the Seoul market from 14th at the beginning of the year. Foreigners emerged as the most influential investors this year, as many local individual investors fled the market, due partly to mounting household debt. With the disposable income to household debt ratio hovering at around a high of 140%, many Koreans simply could not afford to put their money in the stock market.
Experts say the improving global economy will give a boost to the country's manufacturing sector, causing the Kospi to rise about 7% on average next year. Yurian, Arirang News.
The world saw nascent recoveries in advanced economies this year, coupled with recessions in emerging markets. So what does that portend for the coming year? Our Oh Jin-ju gives us a forecast of what to expect in the global economy for the year 2014.
The world is about to bid farewell to 2013, a year in which confidence in the euro was restored and economic growth in China accelerated again, while most emerging markets suffered one of their worst economic crises in decades. So what about next year? Economists project tepid but steady growth in 2014, with recent economic indicators looking positive. The U.S. Federal Reserve provided a concrete example of that optimism earlier in December when it decided to start scaling back its monetary stimulus based on the strength of recent signals from the economy. The International Monetary Fund also made an upward adjustment to its projections for next year's growth rate to around 3.6% from roughly 2.9% this year. However, analysts say there are still some obstacles to overcome, with corporations still unwilling to invest and the high unemployment rate in the U.S. And as for the world's second largest economy, China, it forecasts its economy and financial market to be on a steady path next year as it tries to shift from its current traditional export-led model to a more domestic consumption-driven one. While no official economic target has been announced for next year, many economists predict that Beijing will set a similar 7.5% or higher goal. And the Eurozone, while looking a lot more stable than it did at this time last year, remains the biggest question mark for the global economic outlook. In 2013, the Eurozone finally came out of a long recession and confidence in the single currency was restored. The trend toward stability is likely to continue in 2014. However, the growth outlook remains on the downside. Overall, analysts point out that despite some signs of a brighter future ahead, there is a need to address the big structural problems and imbalances that continue to weigh on the global economy. Oh Jun-ju, Arirang News.
The sluggish global economy affected almost every country in the world, and Korea was no exception. Korea showed two different extreme consumption behaviors and favored certain electronic appliances. Our Connie Kim has more on what Koreans went out and bought in 2013.
Korean society has entered a slow growth stage, and in 2013, that was accentuated in two already existing consumption patterns that came to the fore.
As a response to the slow economic growth, consumers are purchasing low-cost everyday products, while at the same time spending more on goods that reflect their tastes and interests.
The Korea Trend Research Institute included budget phones and less expensive convenience store brand products on its list of 2013 hit items. Budget phones targeted the niche market of customers who only wanted the basic functions of a cell phone, while the convenience store brands targeted consumers looking for bargains.
I usually purchase convenience store brand snacks and coffee. I buy these products because they offer a wide variety, lower prices, and are high quality.
However, on the other hand, individuals showed a different purchasing trend when it came to small luxuries, including desserts, liquor, and premium perfumes.
The luxury trend has become widespread, and consumer purchases of small luxuries have become even more popular because of the relatively low cost.
Consumers also prefer to buy multifunction electronic appliances such as refrigerators that preserve kimchi, make carbonated water and purify water, and air washers that are combination humidifiers and air purifiers. These new categories of appliances were popular as they reduce energy consumption and free up extra space.
Analysts say the consumption trend for 2014 will resemble a barbell where consumers select products that offer traditional conveniences and at the same time, new experiences. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
As the year comes to an end, more people decide to share what they have left over those in need. The donating trend in Korea is steadily changing, with individuals choosing to be more charitable with their extra pennies. Our Shin Se-min has more.
An anonymous individual dropped a check worth nearly $95,000 into one of the Salvation Army's red kettles in Seoul this December. The organization says it's the third straight year that the generous benefactor has made a donation, although he or she remains unknown. Although most of those donating money in Korea are giving far less than thousands of dollars at a time, the total amount being donated in the country has been on a steady rise in recent years. In 2011, a total of $10.5 billion was donated nationwide by businesses and individuals alike, with 63.5% of that total coming from individuals. And this is a 30 percentage point increase from 4 years earlier.
This thermometer in Gwanghwamun Plaza is part of the Community Chest of Korea's year-end fundraising drive that runs through Lunar New Year. And as you can see, citizens have contributed around $200 million so far, roughly 90 million short of the target amount.
As for why Koreans are giving in record amounts, analysts say economic growth isn't the primary reason.
When you give individually rather than in a group or corporate setting, it becomes a personal matter because the giver has the power and choice over the donation, and the receiver knows exactly where the donation comes from. And there is increased happiness because of the more personal for the both parties.
A sentiment echoed by the warm-hearted individuals who are giving this holiday season.
Although it's a small amount, the fact that I contributed in helping those less fortunate gives me satisfaction.
And it doesn't only have to be cash or coins dropped in a bucket. Individual donors in Korea are also encouraged to donate via the phone, credit card, and by wire transfer. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
A second terrorist attack in 24 hours in the southern Russian city of Volgograd is triggering some serious safety fears in the run-up to the Sochi Winter Olympics. At least 14 people were killed and 28 wounded Monday when a bomb struck a trolley bus. This attack came one day after 17 died in a suicide bomb attack at the main train station in the city. Interfax news agency reported Monday that Russian authorities believe Pavel Pachinkin, a member of a Dagestan-based militant gang, was the bomber in the train station attack. Responding to growing fears about safety, the International Olympic Committee president says he is confident Russia will deliver a safe and secure games in Sochi.
And happy New Year's Eve, everyone, as we kick things off with one of the more popular athletes of 2013. That's right, we're talking about figure queen Kim Yeon-ah, who's set to perform at the National Figure Skating Championship from January 4th to the 5th. And with the tickets for her performance on the 4th being sold out in 15 minutes, fans knew getting the tickets for the January 5th performance was going to be tougher. And as soon as the tickets went on sale at 7 p.m. on Monday, it took just minutes before it was sold out, even with the 2 tickets per person limit on the sale. Knowing it will be Kim Yeon-ah's last competitive performance here in the nation, fans made sure it was going to be a packed house at the National Figure Skating Championships. Moving on, after being introduced by the Texas Rangers last Friday, Choo Shin-soo held a press conference to talk about his latest contract and his future. With the Korean slugger signing a 7-year, $130 million deal with the Texas Rangers, Choo stated that it was his wife and kids that had huge impacts on signing the contract. He added that he wants to finish off his career with at least 300 home runs and 300 stolen bases, and will continue to play for the Korean national team as long as it doesn't conflict with this season. That's Choo Shin-soo, another athlete to look forward to in the new year. And finishing things off, 2013 was certainly a great year for this next footballer, and his name is Son Heung-min. And according to ESPN, he is one of the top Asian footballers, I should say #1 top footballer of 2012-2013 season, for having an amazing season with Bayer Leverkusen. And the Bundesliga seems to agree with that as well, as they listed the 21-year-old at number 8 for this season's best transfer signing in the league. Meanwhile, Gangsu Evergrande central defender Kim Young-gun was listed at number 6 in ESPN's top 10 list as well. Well, that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Happy New Year's Eve, everyone. And it looks like people celebrating the New Year's Eve today will enjoy even milder temperatures under mostly to partly sunny skies throughout the day. So we could watch the last sunset of 2013 with only a few patches of clouds this evening. But the chance of light flurries is in there for the central region, so please be on the lookout for that. And we should have a mild start to 2014 as well. So if you'll be out to see the first sunrise of 2014 tomorrow morning, we won't shiver in cold, but be sure to dress in layers to stay warm. With that in mind, here are the readings for today. The high in Seoul will peak at 6, while Daegu and Gwangju will get up to 9 and 8, and Busan will see a high of 10. And for other regions, it looks like people in Jeju should see a high of 10 in the afternoon. Daejeon and Dokdo will reach 8, but the top temperature on Mount Keungan will be -2. Now that's all for me at this hour, and I hope you have a wonderful New Year's Eve today.
And that does it for this New Year's Eve edition of Daybreak. Wishing everyone a happy new year. I'm Choi Yusan in Seoul. Thank you for watching.